Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Powerful Stuff, your one-stop shop for inner and outer connection. And I'm going to talk to you guys about a very important and, dare I say, powerful topic today that I have gotten to relive myself. That is why I am living my fucking brand. And that is this idea of being a beginner again when we've been an expert, being humbled, getting re-triggered when we put ourselves out there and say, like, how do we convert this into a catalyst? Intellectually, I know that rejection is a redirection and all of that good stuff and all of those isms, but how do I actually feel it when I had an ouchie of putting myself out there and feeling, dare I say, not enough based on the response? So how do we alchemize this when intellectually we know that, we're better than this, or that, why should I care so much? But I'm still feeling really bogged down or bothered by this. Well, you guys, I lived it again. I went into the field. I did it just for you guys so I could report back and say, this is how we overcome it. I survived. I'm still alive, but I'm barely breathing, as the script would say. So I'm going to rewind it back with my personal anecdote and then let us break it down so we can repattern it and turn it into alchemy. And a few things happened for me like the last few months. As you all know, I am postpartum. I am 5.5 months postpartum. It's funny, I joke with my husband. I'm like, that's my excuse for everything, which, obviously it is its own roller coaster and deserves its moment. I'm like, but I'm postpartum. And I also have gotten my period back. So I'm postpartum and luteal sometimes, and not to make that a self-fulfilling prophecy because I can maintain a state of equanimity while I'm in it. But wow, what a relief when the period comes and you're like, oh my God, I wasn't crazy or in deep despair. I was just in my luteal phase. What a relief. Let's all take an exhale for that. So to open the space, 5.5 months postpartum. I've been coaching since, about 1.5 months postpartum, just like easing back into it. But in my life blood, y'all, I am a facilitator, a connector, a creator of experiences. I love the rush of the in-person experiences. I love thinking on my feet. I've been doing this for coaching workshops, breath work, yoga for, a decade and a half. That's when I started doing this for yoga and meditation. So all of that is to say, a few weeks ago, I decided to take a little swing on an opportunity. Like, I was already planning on hosting my own retreats, hosting my own workshops, coming back postpartum. But I was, if I'm being honest with you, dragging my feet a little bit on it. And that is okay because, we all come back in our own time. And I had a lot going on and all of these things, giving little Meredith compassion. However, I saw this other opportunity from another place, so not one that I would be hosting myself. But I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just apply. It would be really fun. And whatever if I don't get it, because I know who I am. I know my experiences are incredible. I know people get a lot of value out of my experiences. I love doing them. I'm in my flow state when I do them. So I stepped outside of my own comfort zone to do this, to give a sample to this other person who I didn't know. And it was already kind of vulnerable because they're like, oh, well, I'll just pop to one of your other experiences and see how you work. And at that moment when they asked that, I didn't have any experiences on the calendar. So that already was this weird moment of this used to be such a part of me. I was always doing best morning ever before I went on mat leave. My yoga, meditation, breath work in the mornings. And I always had a powerful stuff live, once a month or every other month where I'm doing comedy, coaching, connection. And already I didn't have anything on my quote unquote home court, so to speak. So I offered them this thing on their turf, as you would say, but not that it's a turf thing, but just kind of energetically, right? I'm not inviting them into my space, into my thing that I've already created, that other people are coming to see specifically me for, because they know my experiences and that's they understand the vibe and that's why they're coming. So I already felt a little kind of vulnerable about that. And it did this weird thing where it brought me back. And this other person was perfectly nice, perfectly neutral, right? But the whole experience of auditioning or going to someone else brought me back to I had a flashback when I was like 22. I just graduated Oxford with my master's, but I was like really deep into the yoga world. And I was running around London trying to convince studio owners to hire me. Some of them wouldn't even hire me for their sub list because I was still finding my voice that time as a yoga teacher. And some of them said, like, yeah, they just didn't want my vibe, or I was still coming into my own authentically and it didn't feel quite what they wanted, or I would like try to rush through things or add so much to my class to try to prove. And for whatever reason, like, I did get some no's, and then those eventually led to yeses by the end of my year in London after many no's, where I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I just like got this master's in African studies and I'm running around London teaching yoga, which is a whole thing in itself, right? To give myself compassion and permission, like, okay, my road is taking a different turn, but it's compassion and permission. And B, whether the yoga studio managers accept me or not in London doesn't mean anything about my worth or my ability to teach or my ability to grow into an even better teacher and incorporate this as like free feedback. And so it was this weird, vulnerable moment in London. And it kind of put me in a funk, if I'm being honest, because, I had all my friends who graduated who were like going off to do incredible things. And yeah, I was kind of confused, searching for myself, also holding space as a yoga meditation teacher and kind of figuring out what all of that meant at that time. So it was a very transformative time, and I'm proud of myself for putting myself out there. But it was also this moment of like, don't let other people create your worth. You create the room. And like since then, I had gotten so much better at like really owning and creating my own authentic experience. And of course, I had done, auditions and other stuff since then. But that year was really seared into my mind in that way. And I eventually took that feedback to make my most authentic classes ever, where I'm putting fucking Taylor Swift on the playlist, or we're doing breath work to the theme song of White Lotus, and I've loved that. I've grown to love having that creative agency in my classes, but also listening to the room, seeing what my students need. All of that is to say, guys, okay, so I had that trigger from when I was 22 and feeling kind of like not enough. What am I doing? And I noticed that trigger or those old stories starting to come up. And this is so freaking funny because I always tell my clients, like, you know, just because an old story comes up doesn't mean we have to attach ourselves to it. We don't have to attach ourselves to it. We can just look at it and we can be like, okay, like that is showing me that a younger part of myself needs a little reminder. They need a little love. I always tell my clients, like, in order to break old patterns and exist in new spaces or exist in the gray area, because that is where the growth happens, we need to remind our younger self, you are safe, you've done it before, you can do it again, or here are times where it didn't work out, but you still survived and then it became a stepping stone, right? And like in London, for every yoga studio that it didn't work out at, I found another one to teach at. By the time I left London, I had led yoga in like London, Norway, Liberia, and had also taught like 100, 200 person classes for Lululemon. And I had really like cut my teeth that year of like hustling in the yoga world. And it was really formative in, figuring out my voice and foundation as an instructor and as a facilitator in general. All of that's to say, I did this thing for this person. I noticed those old stories come up. Even though I intellectually knew I don't have to attach myself to them, it was much different to intellectually know that and then to actually live it. And then after this experience, when the person was kind of just neutral, right? They weren't like, oh my God, that was so amazing. I am so excited to collaborate with you. They were just kind of neutral, like, okay, well, I'll like circle back. And I noticed myself going into this deep shame spiral of like nitpicking myself, what I could have done differently. If then, right, if I had done this differently, would this have been different? Did I do too much of this? Was it too rushed? I always tell my clients to slow down, but I couldn't even slow down. And then I noticed myself having a compounding shame spiral on top of that, which was like, I shouldn't even care about this. Like, what would my clients think to see me caring about such an inconsequential thing? What would my son think to see me caring about? And so then I was like shaming myself for caring as well, which was just like an extra weight on my chest. And I felt like just so anxious and so down. And I had to take myself on my own self-compassion walk, which is where you walk and you say with each step what you're, what you forgive yourself for. And then on the way back, you say each step what you love yourself for. So I was like forgiving myself for all of these little nitpicky things. And, even though I know I held the room when I had the experience, I just was being so punishingly hard on myself. And so I did this self compassion walk, but I still felt it. And then I like did the next step, which is what I tell my clients, which I kind of already mentioned, which is I wrote a letter to little Meredith. Like, I totally get why this is flaring up again. You care so deeply about the experiences you lead, and you also have a fear of being misunderstood. I have a fear of being misunderstood or not being fully seen, right? When someone just gets a sliver or an interaction with you on a bad day or an off day, and you're like, that's not me. Like, if you could see the real me, right? If you could see that I'm the one who understands you, like how frustrating is that when we feel like we had an off interaction with someone, whether it's someone you're trying to impress, like at work or new business connection, or someone you're romantically interested in, and you feel like you have an off interaction and you're like, that's not me. You want to be like, this is the real me. Anyway, so I realized I had a fear of being misunderstood that was also being triggered. Meanwhile, this other person probably had no idea I was going into this spiral. And so I wrote little Meredith like all the times that it didn't, you know, work out and I survived, right? Like, we've had these kind of neutral or negative moments in the past. Not only did I survive, but I usually use them as fuel. It's not a failure if we uh, get kicked down, but then like use it as a stepping stone or be like, what can this motivate me to do? Where do I go from here? How did I learn? Right. And that's the difference between growth and rumination. Rumination is like being navel gazy. What do we make it mean about ourselves? Like punishing ourselves, lacerating ourselves on the back, and versus, okay, like, here's what I learned from this, and here's what I'm going to do differently next time. And like, God bless the people who can just get there in 0 to 1 second. But even as a coach, I have to use my own tools, give myself a dose of my own medicine. And so I like wrote little Meredith this note, and I was starting to feel a little better, but I still like felt this contraction in my chest. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to go in for surgery, remove this like huge thing that just feels so like lumpy and constricting in my body. And so then I was like, okay, I am, always talking about self amusement on powerful stuff and with my clients. What would the self amused Meredith do? And this is where I get kind of existential kinky, because I would be remiss if I don't mention existential kink at least once every other powerful stuff podcast. So I drafted myself a rejection text from this person. And I was so vicious because I wanted to be so sure that anything that they said could not be worse than the text that I already drafted and got to somatically feel and experience in my body. So I was like, hey, like, that was actually way too much. Like, in fact, you're too much. In fact, like, I can't believe you've had so many years experience like facilitating and coaching, and then this is how you lead. Like, are you joking? Your son must be so embarrassed of you, and then, like, it's kind of pathetic that you even care. Like, didn't you think you would be further along by this point? And like, here you are, like, trying to please me. Like, pathetic. I was like so vicious, like, and I almost was laughing at the end because I'm like, of course no one would ever send this, and they're not even thinking that. If anything, if it doesn't work out with someone, it's probably just like a energetic fit or what they're looking for. People aren't usually like thinking about how awful you are, especially if you're nice. You showed up with a good heart and you gave it your best, right? And so I like sent myself this text, and I just sat with myself and I noticed the contraction. I let myself feel it, and I was like, oh, this sucks to hear. Like, oh, and I just like, blah, like, and I also did this funny thing because I was solo parenting that day because my husband was camping. I There's this baby song called "Shake My Sillies Out" by Rafi, who is the Beatles of children's music according to Wikipedia. But he was like, "Gotta shake, shake, shake my sillies out, shake, shake, shake." So I was singing it to my son and blasting it, and then I was also jumping up and down and shaking, like doing my own somatic release. And I was like, see, Atlas, like, this is how we process our emotions. It's okay, mommy's anxious. We're letting the anxiety move through us and saying, thank you, welcome. You're welcome to pass through. I'm here to experience you fully. And then, like, thank you, wishing you a safe passage. So I did that, and I did the text, and it was just so funny because I was just like, I bet this person has no idea how I'm processing this. And then I did end up writing it into a stand-up bit because I'm like, this definitely has to go into the postpartum bit. And then on the other side of that, something magnificent started to happen, which is I started to feel like, okay, like, duh, I am going to be okay. Like, this is all fine. And like, wow, like doing this text and experiencing it, like I do have so many fun tools to offer myself and other people. And then I started to feel re-energized, and I reached out to some people in my life who I've already collaborated with, who make my nervous system feel safe, because I was like, you know what, I'm proud of myself for taking that big swing, and I can continue to build with people who I know that are like collaborators and allies and know what I have to offer and are like down to help me succeed. And so I was able to finally turn that experience into like a reaffirmation of like, oh yeah, I do want to be leading things again and in a big way. And I get to choose like which rooms I create it in, right? It's not just waiting to feel chosen by somebody else, but it's like, what feels good for me? Where can I create? How can I grow? And again, this is nothing to say about the other person. It was just a neutral reaction, which I'm sure they're like just being professional, right? But it was everything to do with my own internal stories, which I want to emphasize, because we can never know what someone else is thinking. Oftentimes, other people don't even know what they're thinking. But that whole experience was a reminder, wow, like little Meredith needs so much compassion as well, like just as much as my clients, and I tell them to give their self, which as coaches, I always say we have to be our own client zero and put our money where our mouth is. And so I did that, and then I started creating. I started like reaching out to people and putting things in the calendar and getting the ball rolling and be like, this experience will not be in vain. I feel recentered. I feel seen by myself. I was able to have a good fucking laugh. And now I'm ready to get back out there. And then lo and behold, the week after that, I led an incredible experience for founders where I felt even more in my power and clear and prepared, because I had already been through that experience and gotten those jitters out, and led my own coaching workshop in SF. And that one, was a melting pot of different experiences I've led in the past. And so that one, it was cool because it wasn't perfect, right? Because it was an experiment of a few different styles that I've led in the past. But I didn't beat myself up about it after. I instead was able to then adopt a curious standpoint of like, let me send a survey to people. Let me see how people can grow, or how I can grow from getting people's feedback. And I was able to like listen to people's feedback in a way where I knew that they like liked the experience, but like wanted to help me improve it. And they were like there in my corner. And then I like reached out to some people that I've loved working with in the past in LA, and yeah, started getting the ball rolling on some things there. So it's just crazy when we're in it how much we can make an old story mean so much about ourselves. And that's why I love compassion, to kind of calm our inner child first and foremost, and then humor to like take ourselves out of it a little bit and just give ourselves the bird's eye perspective on it. And with both of those things, I was able to move through it so much quicker. Not only did I use it as fuel for what I want to create, but I also turned it into material for a stand-up story, because I'm like, I know that I'm probably not the only one who is going through an identity shift, whether it's postpartum, like you just gave birth, or you're transitioning jobs, or whatever it might be, where you feel naked and exposed, and you're putting yourself out there again in an area where you felt like you were an expert at in the past, but you kind of need to approach it from a beginner's mindset. So all of that's to say, guys, if you are going through something like this as well, those are the two main steps. Is just like being compassionate with yourself, writing your inner child a little letter of like, hey, we've gone through this before. We've gotten like harsh feedback or harsh whatever in the past, and it's worked out. Here's how we incorporated it. Here's how we grew from it. Here's what it reminded us about ourselves and the type of room we want to be creating, or the type of people we want to be surrounding ourselves with. And then having that fun rejection text, having fun with it and making it like super over the top, right? And then allowing yourself to feel the sting, the ouch of that, which is also something I did when I, back in the day, 6 years ago, asked my husband to be, like if we were going to be exclusive or not, because if not, then I was going to need to take a step back. But I drafted a text back from him and envisioned him, being like, I actually want to be able to be free and meet all these other women on my South America travels. And I imagined myself having to sit with that uncomfortable truth. And it didn't fully take the pain away, right? But it eased it a little bit of like, oh yeah, I can experience these emotions. I can sit through them and I will make it out on the other side. And even just that first step starts to loosen contraction and allows us to sit in the gray area. And there's been, Carolyn Elliott says this in Existential Kink, and I know there's been other people who say it too, of like doing a rejection challenge where you like put yourself up for like things that you know you're not qualified for or won't get 30 days in a row, because then your KPI is like getting the no. It's like, yeah, like that is my goal, is to get rejected. And so A, it removes the pressure of how the other person responds. And B, it's like shoot for the moon. And even if you miss, you'll land among the stars, right? If you put yourself out there for 30 things that you think you'll get rejected by, chances are one of them is going to work out, right? It's a numbers game. And if not, you're going to learn so much and you're going to be less afraid of getting the no. So like a swing down the line is going to get you a yes. So it's just like a win-win either way, and such an incredible practice for not being knocked off our center point based on other people. And I think that was also a big takeaway for me, is like the yes and, right? Yes, we can care, and we don't have to make it mean something about ourselves, right? It's not to be like, oh, I don't care, I'm a cool kid or whatever. It's like, I do care, I want to do a good job. Like, and it doesn't mean anything about me if it doesn't work out. And accepting both truths at the same time is freeing, because then I'm not shaming myself for my emotions or shaming myself for caring. But I'm also able to be like, looking at it from a perspective of, I don't need other people's validations. I know that this is just this person's opinion. Nothing is personal. And I get to choose the lessons and learnings I take from it. So with that, guys, we'll just go into a little brief meditation when you're feeling anxious or notice an old story returning. But this is going to be just a bit more dynamic. It's going to be a standing meditation. We're going to do a short and powerful one. So go ahead and stand up and just feel into your body where that feeling of contraction is, right? That feeling of like, this old story is coming up. I don't feel enough. I'm waiting for this person's response. It does not feel good to give someone power that I don't even know they have. Maybe you feel it in your heart. Maybe you feel it in your stomach. Maybe you feel it in the crown of your head. And just go ahead and place both hands there and breathe into that. Close your eyes. Breathe into it. And as you breathe into it, just seeing that scared little version of you, maybe from the past, who experienced these ouchies or fear of being chosen or not being chosen. And just ask them to express their deepest fears, like those stories. I'm not enough. I'm afraid that I'll be found out, whatever it might be, just letting them speak. Letting that younger version of you know that they're safe, that it makes sense why they feel this way. And then from that place, ask them what they need to trust you, that you've got them regardless of these other person's responses or what happens. Not only do you let them know that you can do that, but you remind them of all the times in the past where they took a big swing and it worked out. And maybe one particular instance comes to mind. And maybe an instance where they took a swing, it didn't work out, but it actually led to incredible growth or an incredible pivot that had to happen that way. Whatever it might be, as they feel this, giving them a hug, and as you give them a hug, feel that tightness start to soften, like you can pull it out of your body, pull it out and shake it onto the ground. And as you shake it onto the ground, hop up and down a few times, like you're really pounding it into the soil for your growth. Shaking it out, maybe shaking your stomach and your tongue and just like, shaking your sillies out, as Rafi, my children's artist that my baby loves, would say. So shaking it all out, feeling it go into the soil, feeling that soil fertilize your roots, your feet, allowing that to lift you, lifting your stomach, lifting the crown of your head, growing your branches of light. And then from this spacious place of groundedness, who knows that everything is happening exactly as it should, imagine the thing not working out, right? Getting the rejection text, getting that letter, the notification, they went in a different direction. And just allowing yourself to feel that, but imagine yourself feeling it, holding the hand of your inner child. And as you feel it holding their hand, feeling them soften, feeling you soften, even though you might feel discomfort or like a little contraction, knowing that you can weather the storm. And on the other side of it, imagine both of you blast into the future 1 year from now, where you have that perspective of it had to have happened that way. It led to my growth as a leader. It led me to finding my person. It led me to having unshakable sense of self-worth that allowed me to take big swings that resulted in huge shifts. And as you look at that you in the future, noticing their energy, their confidence radiating from the inside out, and asking them for a reminder that you can take with you through this. Thanking them for that reminder and asking them what is the perfect next step that you can do regardless of this person's response. Thanking them, giving them a hug, giving your inner child a hug. And give myself a cough. And so it is. Give yourself a hug. Let it out. Stick out your tongue. And then when you're ready, take a deep breath and reach both hands up to the sky. And as you exhale, hands to prayer, tapping your crown, bringing all that energy centered to heart. And then as you open your eyes, guys, feeling that power within you, knowing that it might be uncomfortable, but you're going to get through it and it's going to lead to your growth. And as I was saying before, when I led that workshop last week, we did do some shadow work, right? Playing with that part of ourselves that we're ashamed of. And I went straight into like the roasting or the humor around it. But someone was like, I'm actually not ready for that yet. That actually still feels like uncomfortable. And I realized we didn't warm it up enough. We didn't have enough foreplay, if you will. So the most important thing to do in this kind of situation isn't to go straight to the humor or the rejection text or the comedy roast, right? It's to first have that conversation with your inner child. Remind them that you've got them, that they're valid, right? Hearing their feelings, that makes sense. What do you need from me? And then let's zoom out and let's kind of experience the rejection text tool, the shadow work, the roast, the stand-up comedy from this together. And that is the alchemy. And that, my friends, is powerful stuff. Hey, you. Thank you for coming on this powerful journey with me. I hope it was as powerful for you as it was for me. And if it was, it would mean the world to me if you rate, review, and subscribe to Powerful Stuff so I can keep bringing you the goods. We can keep going on this transformative journey together. And if there's powerful stuff that you want to share with me, with the Powerful Stuff community, tag us on Instagram at That's Powerful Stuff or the Meredith Baker. And I look forward to seeing you next week for more.